Thanks, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm excited to include you in this conversation as I facilitate lovely environments and behavior focused consultancy clients. And as I thought about someone who believes into self love, you immediately came to my mind. And what I love about what you do is that it feels almost dangerous. And I kind of wanted to talk about that. Like you have this quote on your website, and I'm just going to read it, and then I want you to just try it.
Sure.
And the quote is, feeling comfortable in your body isn't actually about your body. It's about getting to know the woman you are underneath and letting her take center stage so you can live life effortlessly.
Yes. Yes. And I think that, what that statement is about is really about coming back to who we are and seeing our value beyond what we've been told it is. So we've been conditioned to believe that our value is in how we look and that that's our currency in this culture. And what that does to us is it literally depletes our soul. So, and I maybe literally is not the correct correct use of that. Maybe that's not the correct use of that word in that sentence, but I'll leave it in there anyways because it depletes our soul. And what I mean by that is it takes up all of our resources. So all of our time, all of our energy, and often our money goes into the way that we look, the size of our body. What are other people thinking of us? How am I presenting myself to the male gaze? How are other people perceiving me? And that takes us away from really knowing who we are, knowing what our true beliefs are, and owning those aspects of ourselves and seeing our value beyond the way that we look. And so that's what that statement is about. It's about knowing who we are. And I think who we are is we're multifaceted individuals. We're made up of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. We all value different things in this life, whether it's a particular lifestyle or different interests, or we just value different things as core parts of our personality, and all of that stuff gets stifled and put down and dampened down when we are hyper focused on the way we present ourselves to others. And all of that is through the conditioning that we've been exposed to as a result of the cultural expectations and beauty standards and diet culture. And so breaking free of that is really brave and courageous because you have to stand out on your own, and the masses are still participating in diet culture and beauty culture. So to be able to reject that and say, you know what? No, I want to be who I am. It really is a rebellious and a courageous and a brave act.
Totally. And I love this idea of it being rebellious because even when you say it, you think, well, what's so rebellious about being me? But when you actually do it, then you get it.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually say, no, I'm not on the diet train, you get it. So, like, can you just share in your own life how you really had to make some radical moves to love yourself more?
Sure. I think the probably the biggest one was drastically changing the course of my career. So I dropped out of the corporate world, I guess 5.5 years ago now, to be a weight loss coach, like to be a nutritionist focused on weight loss. And that was really coming from my own disordered frame of mind. And and I was engaging in weight loss behaviors. I was helping other people with weight loss behaviors. And at the same time, what I was doing was quite disordered. And so when I had my own wake up call around that from myself and my own individual health, when it was presented to me that I was doing damage to my health and that, I needed to stop engaging in these behaviors and that I actually had a disordered relationship with food, I was still on this career trajectory of promoting weight loss and helping people with that. And I think one of the most radical things that I had to do was to take a big step back and realize all the ways that I had led people astray and take a hit, probably financially, in order to be more loyal to my new belief system and what I knew to be true now, which is that diets don't work, that diet culture is really something that sets us up to fail and not feel better about ourselves and keep us coming back for more so that it can keep increasing its profits. It has no interest in our health and well-being. And so to be able to then apply that to the work that I was doing is not the easy route. I mean, people want to buy weight loss, but I had to get to a point where I refused to sell that, and I had to make that radical change. And I think that that was one of the biggest acts of self-love, a radical self-love that I had to do for me, because I know that financially I would probably be making a lot more money if I still told people, yeah, you can like love your body and lose weight. But I refuse to do that because I know it's not true. And I really value integrity. And it was something that I had to do because it aligned to my beliefs. And that was hard for me because for a while I was kind of wavering on these two sides of still promoting dieting, but then in my inside, like realizing it wasn't right. And it took me a long time to be very strong in my convictions, to be able to let go of, what my old colleagues might think of me, what people I used to work for would think of me when they saw kind of this shift that I had made. So it didn't happen overnight. I didn't just wake up and think like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. It happened more gradually, but it was definitely one of the biggest things that I did because it just wasn't feeling right. Like inside I knew it wasn't right. I knew what I was giving to people wasn't right. I could see what was happening, what had happened to me, happening to them. And, somebody, I don't know who used the metaphor of the Matrix, but when you step outside of diet culture and you stop engaging in those behaviors, it is like swallowing the blue pill or the red pill or whichever pill you want to swallow. And you wake up in this new world and you realize, oh my gosh, like look at all the ways that we've been oppressed by this system. Like look at all the ways in which women have been oppressed, and people in larger bodies especially have been oppressed by these standards and by these beauty standards, by diet culture. And it only fuels my fire now. But back then there was still that part of me that was like, ooh, but like, what are other people going to think? and that was hard. And that was hard. And I had to do a lot of work to just work through that and be more loyal to my integrity, be more loyal to my convictions, and be more loyal to the cause than to what some former people in my life might think of me.
And thank you for setting that example, because I think that acting what are people going to think, it weighs so heavily on the backs of so many women. And
Mm-hmm.
it pulls us back from listening to what our inner voice is pulling us towards. So did you said it was really important, like you said, there was definitely this just inner feeling of knowing
Mm-hmm.
that you couldn't keep living anymore and be living out of integrity. Can you talk to us a little bit about that feeling and what did that feel like for you?
Yeah, I think I can just remember having conversations with clients and hearing the desperation of just, because at that point I had said to them, like, okay, we're not going to weigh you anymore. Like, we're not using the scale anymore. But I could hear that desperation that was still there. And I was like, this is just not right. Like, I cannot sell this to people because it doesn't work. And I think the more, and so the feeling itself, like how can I describe this? I think it's kind of like, when you're sitting around the dinner table and somebody says something really offside, and there's just part of you inside that's like, ooh, no, that's not right. I think it was like that. I think it was that kind of a feeling where you just, it either hits you in the chest or it hits you kind of where your eyes are, and they kind of squint together and you make a bit of a face and you think to yourself, ooh, like that's okay. No, that's not right. And And I know that that feeling happened, and then it happened more regularly, and then it would happen when I would read a blog article from somebody else. And the more that I immersed myself in health at every size, the more that I immersed myself in body positivity, like the stronger that reaction gets, or got. And I completely kind of just gutted and rebranded my website, within a few months of kind of going through my own stuff. And that's when I just decided, like, okay, I can't, I can't promote this anymore. Like, I'm just not going to be promoting weight loss anymore. And, it was a bit of like it took a little bit of a hit, and then eventually it started to build back up again in terms of, the number of followers that I had and what was resonating. And what I found was that, the stronger I was with my voice, the stronger I was with my convictions, the more, the more praise I received, the more followers I received, and all of that stuff. So I think, we're so afraid of like, what will people think? But generally, the outcome when we kind of stand in our beliefs and we stand in who we are is that you're going to have people that love you because they resonate with you so much. Instead of just having more people kind of like you. Like it's, there's a quote in my book, which is, I'd rather be somebody's cotton candy ice cream than everybody's vanilla. And I think I truly believe that. I'd rather have a small collective of people who just get it, get what I'm saying, love what I'm saying, totally want to be around me, than try to be liked by everybody and not be true to myself just to protect myself from judgment, or from that pain of knowing that someone's criticizing you or that someone doesn't like you. And, it's not the easy route in our society because we want to avoid emotional discomfort. Like, we're wired to want to avoid emotional discomfort as human beings. So we want to avoid criticism. We want to avoid judgment. We want to avoid rejection. However, we have to ask ourselves, like, is it worth the emotional discomfort of compromising our integrity and our beliefs and ultimately who we are? And I like to think that it's not worth it. I'd rather have somebody criticize me and be true to myself, knowing that, all right, I was true to myself, than have everybody, than have, just, I don't know, try to like, yeah, exactly, and dampen my message, or like turn the volume down on it.
Right. Well, and I want to go back to how you said, like, the more you became aware of the issue in your own life, the more you felt sort of like that punch in the eye every time
Mm-hmm.
you heard somebody say something or you saw a picture. And I think that this is a really important conversation to have, because what we're doing right now is we're creating awareness. Because I think that sometimes we're so immersed and sort of like in this normalized conversation. Like, it's normal for women to talk about how they're dealing with PMS. It's normal because that's what people expect. People expect you to eat your salad.
Yeah.
They expect you to talk about how you ate such and such and that went through your body. Like, that is normal.
Yeah.
And until we step out of that and we start to become aware that actually someone said that that was normal, but it doesn't have to be our normal, that we start to feel uncomfortable when that happens. And I just want to encourage everyone to like really start to allow that discomfort to happen,
Mm-hmm.
because that's when really we bring the change on the inside out.
Yes, exactly. And I think sometimes we go through a process of anger too. So we go through, this process where, when you wake up and you realize, wait a minute, I've just been a victim in this system of oppression, and look what it's done, and look at the impact. We can feel a lot of anger, and I think that anger is, and can be, healthy depending on what we do with it. But the way I like to think about it is that anger was directed back onto you before. So that was your own internalized, fat phobia and internalized oppression. And we were redirecting it back onto ourselves by thinking that we were the problem and hating on our bodies. And so when we wake up to it and we start to have those moments where we're like, ooh, that's not right, or like, oh, that just bothers me so much to see that, um, it's a healthy reaction to feel anger, because we should be angry. Like that, it's taken away parts of our lives in a lot of ways. It takes away parts of our lives. It keeps us from being better agents of change. It prevents us from doing more purposeful things with our lives. It prevents us from having more meaningful connections and getting out there and living life to its fullest. So you have every right to feel angry. I want to say that because I think that's important, because sometimes people go through that process and they wonder why they feel that anger, or they try to like control the anger. And I think anger can be a helpful emotion to have, especially when it's then redirected towards something like justice or compassion, or another, meaningful channel.
So you also mentioned something real quick, is that I feel like I would want to call you an activist. Do you see yourself as that?
I don't identify as an activist, but I do identify as I try to be an ally, I would say. I think I do activate change. I'm more of, see, I identify as a coach. I don't really, because I look at people who are activists, like who are actual, like that's their job, that's their role, as they're an activist. And I don't see myself as that, but I do think that I really do want to activate change in people. So perhaps it's a matter of just semantics in terms of what the definition is of an activist. But I just think there's so many people out there who are like real activists, putting themselves in the line of fire and creating radical change. And I guess I just don't think I measure up at all in terms of what they're doing, and I think that's why I don't think I deserve that kind of recognition. But I think I certainly do try to activate change. I think we all become activists in our own way, whether it's because you have more time now that you can volunteer somewhere, or you have more space in your mind so you can show up and be a better parent. I think all of us have the capacity to be like a little more activated in our lives and do a little bit more activism without being like a quote unquote activist when we free ourselves of diet culture.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love listening to that. So, when someone is sort of coming out of the haze
Hmm.
of having been on a diet since they were 13, literally, I'm sure that there are people listening to this podcast who can relate to that feeling of always quote unquote struggling through the haze. What are some of our first steps of learning how to love ourselves and to be comfortable in that honesty?
Hmm. I mean, it's a process. First of all, I think it's like learning a new language. So the metaphor that I like to use, just to give people a good, solid idea of how hard this process is that it's like trying to learn, let's say, German in the United States while everyone around you is speaking English. So
That
it's
is a very good metaphor.
hard, it's like because everyone around you is still speaking the language of diet culture. Everyone around you is still performing the behavior of diet culture for the most part. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people, majority of people. And you're trying to learn this whole other language, and you're trying to undo all of these ingrained beliefs and all of this stuff that you've been taught. So the biggest piece of advice I have for people is be really gentle and patient with yourself. But I think the other metaphor that I like to use is, it's like, okay, so dieting is like your terrible ex-boyfriend that you can't stop thinking about, and you can't stop wanting to text, and you can't stop wanting to hook up with. Okay? So dieting is like that ex. And if you can, I think all of us have kind of been in a relationship, maybe when we were teenagers, maybe when we were younger, or maybe now, where we had that bad ex situation where you just like couldn't stop thinking about them, and you were so tempted to text them or call them, but you knew they were the worst thing for you. So that's how I kind of think dieting is. And so breaking free of that, it's kind of like the same kind of process. Like, you got to get rid of all their numbers in your phone. You got to get them off your social media feed. And then you got to like have a community of people behind you that are going to say, "No, don't text don't text that person." So if we were to kind of apply that metaphor to what I'm talking about here, some of the biggest steps you can take are purging your social media feed. So getting rid of anything that makes you feel like dieting is the answer. Get rid of anything that makes you feel inferior. Because I think when we start to wake up and look at a lot of the messages that we're being fed, so many of them, like, I don't know, 90% of advertisements are basically saying you're not good enough as you are. So we have the power to start to filter that. And that's a really good place to start by just becoming media literate, like watching the TV and realizing, like, okay, why is teeth whitening even a thing? And why are there no men in this commercial? Like, you can start to become more media literate and then filter that stuff away. So, don't read the magazines that try to give you solutions to fix your problems, because you are not a problem that needs to be fixed. Clear out your social media feed and then immerse yourself, like I said, in the community. Like, you want to have your girlfriends as reinforcements to call instead of your ex-boyfriend. Immerse yourself in body positive communities, because there's so many of those online. So whether it's via podcasts, whether it's via Facebook groups or your Instagram feed, like, you've got to start exposing yourself to all the other people speaking the language you want to speak. So I think I realized I used like two different metaphors in this situation, but both totally relevant. That I love metaphors, and I think that's one of the biggest steps that we can take. And then other things are get rid of clothes that don't make you feel good. Like, get rid of the clothes in your closet that don't fit you. Don't step on a scale. Like, just do a filtration of your life and get rid of everything that doesn't make you feel good that you can possibly get rid of. And that includes other people. So if there's somebody in your life that always makes backhanded comments to you, or is always questioning your body or your food, like, you don't have to have those people in your life if they're disrespecting you, or set some boundaries. And so I think that's the easiest place to start. And then you want to do everything you can to learn the new language. So you want to be in spaces that use that language, that are promoting health at every size, that are promoting self-acceptance, that are saying you don't have to change your body to be lovable and worthy and all that other stuff. And so that's the best place for people to start. And then obviously there's a lot of other layers to it, which typically go deeper in terms of, okay, starting to talk to yourself more compassionately, starting to treat yourself like you matter, starting to discover who you are outside of your appearance, and all of those different layers.
Yeah. So I love all of this that you just said. What comes to mind when I hear you say it is that when we release this thing that has such a strong hold in our lives, like, it opens us up to so much more of who we can be. Like,
Mm.
this is not anymore just about what our bodies look like. It becomes about who you are and who you're being and how you want to show up in this world. And it feels so powerful.
It is. It is. And that's what I think I love about my work the most is where I see people go with this is not just that they get to a point where they're not really, they get to a point where they're not really thinking about their body, which is great. But where they take it beyond that is always what is so incredible to me. And that is they do different things. Like, whether it's now they have time to volunteer. Like, I had one woman who had time to volunteer at a rape crisis center. I had another woman who I shared her story on my social media page because she had always wanted a child and she just never had one. So she went and became a foster mom and she's in her 50s. Like, it's just these incredible things that they go on to do that then has an impact on somebody else's life. Or it's just them being more present and showing up for their kids and being a better role model. They always go on to do something amazing or leave an impact in some way, shape, or form on somebody else. And I think that's what's so powerful about this work, is that when you start to deprogram all the limitations that have been put on you And once you start to really know who you are and have more space in your mind, you are so capable of powerful and incredible things. And you're capable of changing other people's lives. And it doesn't mean you have to go on Super Soul Sunday or do a TED Talk, but even just having time to then, show up at your kid's bake sale, like that stuff leaves an imprint on somebody else's life. And I think that, if you take stock of all the resources, all the emotional energy, physical energy that goes into dieting or trying to maintain a certain size of body, and you think about where, what would be possible if women weren't spending those resources there, like so much would be possible in this world. And and I think, yeah, and so I think, like, the more people that can wake up and see that and start to reclaim their power, the greater chance we have of cultural change. And even if it's just having then the capacity and the strength to be able to stand up to racism, like that's huge in and of itself. And I think that, when we are living in fear and when we are living under just a small life, being obsessed with our bodies, we're not capable of doing these other things a lot of the time. And so it opens us up to so many more possibilities to really change the world.
Yeah, and those three words, transform. Like I really believe that we are all powerful enough to do that, and that we all have seeds planted inside of us that can be us. But we have to focus on them and nurture that, not nurture people in us that are sucking the life out of us.
Right. Yes. Yes. And it takes. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think that that's what's so. That's why it doesn't happen faster because it's not easy. And
And that's why it's radical, because it's not with the in crowd and it's not with all of the rigorous teaching. And we love ourselves so fully that we can stand up and say, yeah, I'm freaking amazing. That is radical. Like that is life changing when we change our thoughts.
yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's so, so, so good. So, I have a question for you about your own practices. Like, I grew up always having sort of like this inner neutral that was stuck. Like, she looked so into me, and I would look at a picture and be like, oh, this picture is ridiculous. And I've done a lot of work. I really can say that I love myself for a long time. But those voices still come. And I wonder if that's your experience and how you resist that.
Sorry, I had to take a sip of water. Yes, that is my experience as well. Because what I have learned is that in order to do the things we want to do, like in order to live the lives we want to live, which, for me involves being out there, being like having a public figure profile on Facebook, so to speak. And that comes with a lot of doubt because I'm constantly pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. Anytime we step outside our comfort zone, we're going to hear the voice of our inner critic. And so it's just this part, like it's there, like I've just embraced that as all right, there's some tender spots of me like that are always going to be there. And I have to just nurture and comfort those as I continue to move forward. I kind of picture it like, all right, there's this dorky 13-year-old girl version of me that was teased relentlessly, that hated herself so much, that is always going to be tugging on my arm saying, Summer, don't do that. It's too scary. People aren't going to like you. And so I just have to acknowledge that and comfort that part of me and nurture that part of me and know that it's going to be okay, like remind myself that it's okay. And I think that the more that we are stepping outside our comfort zone, the more that that voice continues to be there. And I don't want to be living inside a comfort zone all the time. I think the more that we kind of face fears that we have, the more that those become new comfort zones, which then quiets down that fear. So, for example, it used to always be about my body, but I've busted through all those barriers. I don't have those fears anymore. So that is just like being in my body is a comfort zone for me. I don't get any kind of inner critic noise about my body, but I still get it about putting myself out there because the larger kind of my business grows, or the larger my following gets, the more criticism I'm exposed to, the more opposing viewpoints that get thrown my way, the more people who will email me with like hate mail or something. And so I've that stuff still hurts because I'm a sensitive person, and I have tender spots, and I'm always going to be tender to people not liking me. That's all. Like, I've just kind of come to accept that that's a part of me. And so I think accepting that and kind of welcoming that in and then nurturing that part of me is and knowing, what how to work through it, I think has been really important for me. So knowing that, when something like that happens, I need to reach out to my support system to talk about it. I need to kind of like have a good laugh about it, because that's always like laughter and sarcasm are like such a good form of therapy for me. So, and just be really gentle with myself and be kind to myself, and know that that's the path I've chosen. And the alternate path is for me to go back to a corporate job and work for somebody else, and then be miserable because I'm not doing something that really lights my soul on fire. And so it's just part of doing work that lights my soul on fire. It's the shit sandwich that comes with it. So Mark Manson wrote this amazing article about finding your life purpose. I think he wrote it a few years ago, and like the number one piece of advice there is figure out what kind of shit sandwich you're willing to eat every day. And essentially what it means is, like, in order to live your life's purpose or to do something that you truly feel called to do, there's always gonna be like parts of it that you hate. And I think that for me, it's just, putting myself outside my comfort zone. I don't necessarily like it, but it's just part of what I do in order to get my message out there, because I care so deeply about that.
And it comes through. Summer, I just want to acknowledge and thank you for anything that you post on social media and on this podcast. It really comes through. I feel your passion. I feel your dedication to sharing this because I know how important and how messy it is. And I'm so thankful that you're willing to put yourself out there, to brave the criticism and the bullying and all of that, and really stay true to who you are. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, gosh, there's so many people out there that get so much more hate mail than me. So I'm always like, I have so many inspirations of just people. If anytime I'm like feeling down, I'm like, okay, well, this person's been through this like 10 times harder. If they can do this, if they have the strength, then that's it. They're my inspiration. So it's a battle. It's a bit of a battle. The internet is a bit of a battlefield, but it's so worth it to be able to do what we do.
Totally. Well, so why don't you let my listeners know where they can connect with you on social media and all of that good stuff?
Sure. So I am under Summer Innanen everywhere. The easiest place to find all that is my website, and you can go to thebodyimagecoach.com, and that will redirect you to summerinnanen.com, because I recognize not everybody can spell my last name. And all my social media links are there, but I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I am on Twitter, although I don't use it too much. Instagram and Facebook are my main channels, and then my podcast is called Fearless Rebel Radio, and that's my main vehicle of communicating with the world. And I also blog from time to time, and I send out weekly emails as well. So that's all at summerinnanen.com, and I have a Facebook group too. But that's all. It's all on my website, so you can connect with me there.
Fantastic. And we'll put links to all of that stuff on the show notes page of covet.com. So head on over there, hit the podcast tab, and everything will be there. Thank you. So, Summer, I like to end with one last question, something that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what is your kind of
Right this second it's saying you need to drink some water because your throat is really dry. But outside of that, it is telling me my okay, let me quiet myself for a sec. It's telling me to just give space, to allow for space. And if I were to elaborate more on the specifics of that, it's just telling me to slow down for a bit, which is something I need. So it's saying just take your time. Like it's okay. Not everything has to be done right now. And so that's what's underneath the desire for water.
And both of those desires are worthy, and thank you so so much for sharing that. And I love that in our space. I think more of us need to listen and ask this exact question to ourselves.
Yes.
So thank you so so much. I so appreciate you, and I cannot wait for my listeners to hear about this today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. It's always a pleasure.